Good evening and welcome back to the shop here in Canterbury, New Hampshire. Tonight we're going to talk about the lowly, humble clamp and give them some honor that they deserve. I wanted to talk about some of the, begin with one of the types of clamps that you probably see me use all the time. And I'm going to try to go through them in a way that the most commonly used practical ones. There's so many types, and I'm going to basically stick to woodworking clamps here. Okay, so the first one is just what I didn't even know what to call this, but Bessie calls it a regular duty tradesman bar clamp. Now I think they go by, sometimes they measure here for the I think that's a 3.5 inch depth. It's a 3 inch. So, and then it's how far open it goes will get your measurement on the clamp. And this is a 12 inch regular duty clamp. And these I find are extremely useful. And you notice that I keep them close at hand right behind the door of my cabinet. I've got a bunch of them here and I just keep them right on a piece of wood there. I just slide them up and that locks them in fine. And when I want them, I can grab them off really quickly and just put them there. So nothing fancy. And cluster them all together right there. So, you know, they're medium duty. They can apply a lot of pressure. They're not lightweight clamps and they're super useful and use them a lot. They come in different sizes. This 2-footer is really practical and useful. I use these a ton, especially when clamping up like small tables or like chairs like this. You know, you just put them right across. This pad is adjusting, kind of pivoting, and this pad hits flat, comes up, and just a nice little push, and look how tight you get there. So 3 of these could clamp up this whole chair. I put one across here and one across the bottom. Now, usually an F-clamp of this weight will do the job. But sometimes maybe you've got something a little heavier or your joinery is not so good. You really shouldn't get a bigger clamp. You should get your joinery, but you can get a bigger clamp. And here's another version of the F-clamp. This is a 25. Someone check, I think that might have to do with the heaviness of the bar here, but it's substantially heavier. And I didn't get all the ratings. You can go onto Bessie's site if you want to look at these particular clamps and look at the ratings for the pounds pressure each one of these exerts. This one extends to almost 5.5 throat there and opens up. This is like an 18. And I've got a nice set of these. Super handy and tremendous pressure when you need it. These are strong enough to clamp up like heavy blocks together. Sometimes you want to pull together 2 larger kind of chunks of material. And like when I showed the clamping up the football blocks a couple weeks ago, this type of clamp would be excellent because it exerts quite a bit more pressure and you can just apply it and keep, you need a lot of them sometimes when you have that wide pressure, and these are really handy. These start to flex a little bit when you're asked too much of them, and you can actually get a bend in them, which you don't want to do. You want to just use it till it's maxing out, and then you'll have that. Now, check this one out. Here's the third I'll show you in the F clamps. This one has a 30 on it, so I forget what that refers to, whether it's the depth here or it's the strength of the bar, maybe. But this one's a 6 inch deep here, and this is a 1 foot. And this is coming really handy. The deeper it goes, the further you can reach in on a surface, and there's methods where you don't need a super deep clamp that I'll talk about at some point, like clamping tricks, you know, for unusual situations, which always come up during projects. We usually include some clamping tricks, but it's nice to have a heavy duty clamp like that. And that's about it for those F-clamps. I want to show you a few oldies.
Kevin's asking what you use to clean off the bars of the clamps.
These F-clamps, they don't tend to get as messy because they're not usually lying right against the wood. So because you're using them in the way that I showed just on that chair. But what Kevin's talking about, if you're not familiar with these, are these little grooves here which act to grab and give you, and so that this portion of the clamp can really seize on there and you can get the good pressure without it slipping. Well, if glue gets into those little grooves, it's a bit of a hassle. One thing I try to do and remember is if you take some wax, you can pre-wax your clamps when you get them. Just take a little wax, and before I'm going to do a job, sometimes I'll just take some paste wax. This is just like carnauba, and you can rub it right on there. So it does two things. You know, you can, so there's wax like getting in there. So this thing isn't gonna, it won't inhibit like how well it grabs, but if glue gets on, it'll pop right off. The wax won't allow it. So that's kind of a recommended thing to do with these really fine serrated edges there, which can capture glue. It's more of an issue on the K bodies, which I'll show you in a minute, because those are routinely resting against the wood and drips of glue go in there and harden. Another method is if you know where your glue is going to be, you can put a piece of packing tape on there. You can put any kind of tape really over those grooves, and you'll keep the glue from getting in there. You can also wrap it with shrink wrap or some type of thin plastic like that is not going to allow the glue to harden in the teeth. I wanted to just show you some old clamps, and these are sentimental to me because I got them from Pug's shop. I don't see the name on this one. But you know, you got the wooden handle. There's a lot of play in that baby. And it's just worn. Wow. You know, but it's just an older version of the F-clamp. I don't think these ever came with pads on them. I think this is just how they came. I could be wrong, but that was in Pug's shop. Here's another one. Now these were the nicer ones. These are the Wetzler Clamp Company from Long Island, New York. See that? Another red handle. And this is a heavier version. This is almost like stepping up to that heavier F-clamp I showed you a minute ago. And you can find these actually online. That bar is actually quite straight. A lot of these get bent. Like this one has a slight bend in it from being over pushed. And then I've got some larger Wetzler here too, that now that I've got the others, I don't use these as much, but they're pretty cool to have. Occasionally I need extra clamps. You know, you'll have that one job where you've got to go for all the clamps you got to get it done. So that's the regular kind of F-clamp, bar clamp. Now there's some specialty lighter weight ones out there. And this is a cool little quick clamp from Bessie, and I never use these. This is a click clamp by Bessie, and it's pretty cool. It works with this cam action. You just slide this up with this all the way down, and you pull it, and it ratchets and snaps. Now it's good and strong on there, and you just pop that to release it. So it's not a ton of pressure, but pretty nice, sweet little clamp, you know, for a quick grip. And that action is pretty cool to work. Another method that you most often see with the lighter weight variety are these quick clamps, or this quick grip. I think I got this at Woodcraft years ago. And they're pretty nice because they're one-handed things. You could be holding something together and you just squeeze the handle and it just advances up and gives some pretty decent pressure. The pressure depends on this spine or bar, the heaviness of it, how much it'll exert. Well, here's one. When the Bessie did sponsoring, I was sure to get some of these heavier duty quick grips. So this can exert enough pressure to assemble chairs like this. You know, I already put this together, but the spine on this is strong enough. Let's try to get it in position here. That it really pulls that up. Now, the harder you pull that, I can see this is starting to bend. So you don't want to go too much and leave a permanent bend in that thing, but usually they spring right back like that one did. For reference, by the way, and to help you out, if you want to look at these clamps, in the notes we have links to these different clamps. Anyway, here's another version of a Bessie clamp, which I don't use a ton, but it's called Duo Clamp. And it's good if you're into like repairing furniture, like chairs and things, because it's got a little different style quick grip. So it's just like a quick pistol handle this way, but it's made this way so that you can turn this dial. Now when you squeeze the clamp, it comes out. So it changes the direction. So it becomes a spreader type clamp. So right here you can release and slide. So imagine if you had an old chair that you wanted to pull or exert outward pressure to pull those legs apart or that rail, and you didn't want to smash it. You can just put this up in there and crank, and you will get some movement that way. So if you're into that kind of thing, the Duo clamp, this kind of clamp is pretty helpful. There may be other styles. I know there are other styles that can do that as well, but every once in a while I have that issue. But since I gave up repairing furniture as a sideline, I don't run into it as much. But I just want to mention the old C-clamp. I don't use these very much. I know maybe some of you do. I have a few of them, but you know, doing this, when you can use the F-clamp, the speed of the small 1 foot F-clamp that I showed you there, those are basically like speedy C-clamps. This C-clamp will exert more pressure, but you know, it's not really what I use. So that would be like more in the specialty thing. If you have kind of a specialty where those are good for you, then by all means, go for it. I want to move into the other category, the heavier older brothers, or I guess, of bar clamps. This is an old wooden bar clamp. So it was a combination of wood and iron, and this is one of the earlier ways they clamp things up. There are probably wooden screws on there somehow, but this one, you just set the bottom pad into the little notch here, and that catches and you'll apply pressure. This hasn't been used in quite a while. Let's just, for the heck of it, throw some clamps across here and see how this, of course I would have a couple going on here. Let me do it this way. I'm going to bring up these two boards. This is how Puggy used to do a lot. He put two boards, straight edges up, and we would put the boards we were going to glue up on the table like that. Then you had it off the table, and you could get your clamps under the sides if that was the method you're going to use. So let's just put this clamp on top, and let's see what happens here. All right, so you find the nearest notch. That looks pretty good. And let's just crank her up. See what's happening here. It's starting to move. Hopefully don't run out of thread. There it is. All right. Beautiful. Wow, that's some good pressure. The only problem with this wooden clamp is if you can sight down there, it's not exactly straight. It's not the best rail. So whoever made this clamp could have done better choosing the material. I think it was probably poorly stored though to bend in that way. Here's some other old ones. These I really like. These are from the Pugmore days. These are from CT, the CT company. It's the Cincinnati Tool Company. They're a bar clamp. They've got the same notch method. You just fit that in there so you get to where you want it here. And then you just spin the handle and you just snug it up. I have fond memories of tightening many a plano with these, with Pug. You know, it's kind of different when you used to cranking the handle and you just snug it up. There you are. They're a very sturdy bar clamp, but not as heavy, obviously, as the I-beams. So you can buy older clamps online if you like that kind of thing. Here's another old one. This also is from the CT company. Nice little adjustment here in the side instead of along the top. A wooden handle, crank screw, and that's an I-beam, an early I-beam clamp. But the ones I want to show you are the more common here. This is the more contemporary I-beam, and this one is from Bessie. I had a bunch of these from Jorgensen. Jorgensen used to be like the big clamp for a while in the I-beams, and I had some of those, and those were some that I replaced with these when they came in. And so these are beautiful. I mean, they work really well. The amount of pressure you can get with one of these clamps, this is where I was saying earlier, it's total overkill, you know? And this is also where, when you glue up, the material is resting on the bar. So let me just do a very quick show of this. I'm gonna bring up this MDF. I'm gonna go under here, bring this up, and then I would have probably 3 for this. But you just bring it up, and I'd have the other 2 over here. And what's great is the rail is so true that it acts as a truing, it gives truing action. So when you snug this up, if you keep everything tight down on the rail, you know you're going to be flat. So I always feel for flush as well on the top, and then snug it up. Now this is, the pressure you get with these guys is tremendous. I think these are some of the strongest clamps that Bessie has in this woodworking category, the I-beam clamp. So you don't need to crank it. Those numbers earlier, we were talking about pounds for the glue, you're easily going to get it here. So it's just, the trick is not overdoing it. So I'll just snug it up until I see that pull all the way, and just make sure it's total, and you're going to be good to go. As long as there's not a lot of stress on that joint, it's not crazy wild figure, you're going to have a nice glue joint right there. Because you want it to last over time. Seasonally moving, there's a lot of weird stresses get exerted on these glue joints. So you got to have a good fitting glue joint to begin with, and you'll have a long-lasting fit there. This is the K-body clamp that Bessie came out with a while back. It is a bar clamp. It's got straight jaws, so you can clamp across flatter surfaces wider. It takes a little getting used to. You know, I was so old school with the bar clamps in the old ways, and the handle clamps that Pug had. This was kind of weird how to work this at first, but once, it's a pretty easy learning curve. You really would benefit by waxing these, because you can see this glue. There's actually a little bit of glue right in here, but not enough to mess it up. See, I can go right over that, and it's not really enough, but I wish I had waxed that. I've heard other people, if you take a soft wire brush after, you can easily knock it out as well. One thing I didn't realize at first was when clamping with these guys, sometimes you have weight on there and the clamp wants to fall like that, and you want it to stay flat on the table, and that's what these little plastic things are for. You just slide them in, and it keeps your clamp nice and flat and true on the table. But again, these are super easy to work. Same kind of thing. I would put 3 under here, probably. You could alternate top and bottom to change the pressure, but I'm just going to show you the clamping action on this. Again, you just bring it up, and then turn, and it grabs, and you get really nice pressure. The beam here is also very true like the I-beam, so they're really nice. I mean, they apply a lot of pressure, plenty, for most glue ups, But if you really have a wide, where you need that added pressure, you want to go with the I-beam. But these are really adequate for most situations. They take up a little more room, you know, than the I-beams with these chunky heads. But it's nice to have a few.
Bruce is asking if you're going to mention cauls at all. He's just saying that how they help distribute force and reduce marks and dents.
There are times when it's useful to use like an auxiliary piece of wood. Like in this case, it's not really necessary because you've got these wide pieces. But when if you've got narrower strips of wood, it's always helpful if you can put like a wider, heavier piece on the outside, and that heavier piece of material reduces the number of clamps you need as it distributes the pressure more kind of wider, because it's a wider piece. So when you crank down on that, if it's sturdy, the pressure actually is exerted in a wider area because it's rigid. You can imagine if you had a narrow strip, you know, a bunch of narrow strips, and you put pressure, that pressure is more narrow going through, but the spine of that outer caul distributes pressure well. So it's really a situational thing, like when you're going to throw in that type of caul to distribute the pressure when you clamp it up. So there is a cheaper way to get an I-beam like clamp, and you've all seen that. It's the good old pipe clamp. It's probably one of the less expensive ways you can do it, because all you need are the fittings for the clamp. You've got the head clamp and this sliding lower piece. Now it's on a piece of black pipe. This is a 3/4 inch setup, so the actual outside diameter of this pipe is like 1 inch. So it's pretty strong, but these can bend. You know, I've seen a lot of pipe clamps and they tend to flex, but usually you'll get enough pressure. This 1 inch pipe is pretty stout. But, so that's a good method of getting in a lot cheaper and getting the bar clamps you need, the pipe clamps you need. That's about it for the bar clamps. Here's just a couple oldies. Another one, look at this. This is a cam kind of clamp. This slides up. I don't even know if I've ever used this. And it works on the cam action. Again, look at that. It grabs just by that cam going up, and I've got a nice pressure. I can't even move those. And then to release it, you just actually force it down. It's not like a quick release. It just holds when you ratchet it up on the cam. So that's a good way to glue up panels. And so we've gone through a lot of F clamps and bar clamps and all of that. And I want to show you just a few other clamps that are nice to have. The little spring clamps like this. You've seen me use these to apply cove moldings. That's one type of clamp, but I do want to talk about the hand screw clamps, or the wooden parallel jaw clamps. I typically call them hand screws, but these are useful in all kinds of situations. They have a deeper reach, so I've got these 5 different sizes. These were the old Jorgensen's. They're handy like when you're trying to clamp at an angle, like sometimes you don't need direct parallel strength, or like I said, if you need to get a deep grab on something, you can use this type of clamp. I've shown recently where you can use it as an auxiliary vise. We had it in the vise like that, and you're able to clamp up and get it up higher or smaller. I was doing something at an angle. And then also, it's really useful. I've used it many times on the drill press, where you can clamp this to the drill press table, and you can hold your workpiece. If it's a smaller piece, you can clamp it in there with this clamp fastened to your drill press. Then you can lock it in, so you have really good control to drill a hole when you need really great accuracy in something small. Okay, you can use this type of jaw that way. There's so many ways to use these things, but they're not as commonly useful as the regular F clamps, you know. These are used probably most, and then you get more into the variety of other clamps. and the bar clamps and all that. Now, one type of clamp I want to mention are strap clamps. I don't use those a ton, but I do have this this one I've been playing around with. I've been playing around with this idea of making some round frames, like round mirrors, but this is a little prototype I was working on a little while ago, and it's got the curved pieces, but I think the way I'm going to do it is more with the facets and then saw it out, like this one I believe was pre-sawn and then glued up. So anyway, you can use these kind of strap clamps that go right over there. It goes around, and this one, you crank it almost like a fishing rod here to bring in the slack. Okay, and you adjust your strap, and then you turn this handle, and it starts to bring the strap tighter and tighter and tighter around. Now, if the strap is binding here, you won't actually get the full pressure over there. So they make these little pads, like when you're working with corners, the strap goes through here and these little jaws go against, like usually it's on a corner. So what I'm going to work with is either a hexagon or an octagonal piece, so you'll have 8 pieces, 8 seams, and you'll need one of these on each corner. And the strap will go around, and those pads will distribute nice pressure right on the joint, forcing all of the joints inward, and the strap will slide smoothly on the outside. It won't be stopped around the hard edge of the corner. So these little spacer guys are handy for that. But this is a pretty cool clamp from Bessie, and I thought that's nice to have if you're going to do that kind of work. Some people glue up chairs, like dowel type chairs, with this kind of thing, go around the legs and crank it, and all the rails come in. In certain cases you can get away with that. So it's pretty handy to have one of these. But I'm going to throw it over here. And the last thing I want to show you is a souped up strap clamp. So we got this form, and boy, this goes back a little ways. If you guys remember, we glued up around this form, and you know, I've left it in the clamps. So I didn't need it. I was just doing a demo of laminating around a form. But this is another way that these types of strap clamps are really helpful. Now these are just like freight clamps. They're 2-inch wide ratcheting hold down straps that truckers use a lot. But they're really good for this type of thing because you get tremendous pressure, and it slides easily on the MDF in this case. So the pressure is distributed nicely and evenly. But if you don't have kind of a symmetry to the curve, you may get a little hollow spot where the strap is not applying good pressure. So in that case, I would just add a little bar clamp with a block or something if you had any flat area. I'm going to take it out now, and let's loosen these straps, just like your regular smaller straps, and then they have these large little buckles that go through. All right, so these are my cauls. So we do use the cauls for that kind of thing. Those, and then here's what we glued up that evening. I've got a couple pieces of wacky bending ply with an 1/8 inch layer in the middle, and then 1/16 inch poplar on the front and back. So there you have a nice heavy apron. And this could be, I think what I did was I scalloped the apron and attached the legs kind of with like a bridle joint up into it. But that's one way of doing it. Here's a couple versions. I think they came off the same form. And I think I was considering using these to make a round table. So these are already got like a mahogany veneer on the outside, but that's not a fine grade mahogany. I'd probably do something else on top of that. But so that's another method of clamp. The old strap clamp can be used to distribute nice pressure in a way like that around a form. A lot of that is almost intuitive, like you're figuring out methods. We even use tape as the primary clamping method when we did our Cooper door episode a little while ago. There was no actual physical clamp. I had green tape. That was it. So tape can be a clamp. Shrink wrap can be a clamp. In the old days, rope was a clamp. They would wrap tightly rope around things that needed to be bound together. So there's lots of resourceful ways of going about it. And sometimes you just gotta, as Pug would say, feel your way along. Oh, that's the other thing I forgot to mention was one of the great aspects of the black pipe and those little 3/4 inch, and this is why I have them, because they can be threaded onto any length of pipe. So I've got these long clamps, and every once in a while you need a clamp that long. That's a 9-foot long clamp right there. And I've used it a few times, and like David Lamb's around the corner, and he has a couple of them. There have been times when he's needed a couple extra, or I've needed them. We grab each other's long clamps to do the job when we just don't have enough. All right, everybody. Hey, once again, if you enjoy this content, please consider subscribing. We love it when you do.
Yeah,
You're
click
in the
that
family.
like button. That would be
and
great.
hit the like button and ring the bell, and you'll get the videos every time. And if you want to go deeper with us, go to epicwoodworking.com and register at our website and check out all the cool projects and videos we have there for you as well. On behalf of the camera lady and myself, we really enjoyed spending some time with you in the shop, and we look forward to next time. Good night, everybody.
Take care.